So welcome to Worlds Beyond. I am your host, Jared Walters. And today we are proud to welcome Jesse Ann Nichols George, who is currently touring the US on her Compassion Tour, and is the author of several books including You, Me, Life, Dreams and Activating Compassion. Jesse, it is absolutely fantastic to have you on the show here today. And I'd just like to say thank you for coming on. And just for the audience, could you give us a little bit of background, please, about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Well, what I do is I'm called an integrated development specialist. And what that is I had to come up with a term that would cover everything I was doing, which is a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it got much easier than listing off about 50 different fields, practices, belief systems, because that's what I do, is I blend a lot of different techniques and a lot of different options. In the work that I do, it blends the Eastern and Western philosophies, it blends the practical and the intuitive in my work. So it's a nice balancing point between using all these different aspects, and I just kind of bring them in seamlessly. So sometimes I'm bringing in astrology things, or I'm bringing in numerological things, or I'm bringing in different belief systems or symbology or things like that. But one of the key things that I have is I have an ability to spot patterns that are going on in people's lives. And so when we're drawing different things in and we're getting different experiences in our life, there's almost always patterns that are going on, or something that we're working through on that. So a big part of my work is helping people identify those, what they mean, how they're playing into their life, and where they can go with that. The foundations of the work that I do is based in compassion. And I've written 4 books now, 2 that are based on compassion and 2 that are based on relationships. I've got a long family lineage in this type of work. On one side of my family, I'm at least 13th generation spiritual advisor and healer. And on the other side of the family, I'm at least 13th generation druidic. So that's based around the elements and the flow of the seasons and cycles and things like that, which I incorporate a lot in my work as well. And ever since I was a child, I remember at the age of 3 having dreams that were premonitions. And I would see things before they happened, and I would dream them, and then there they were happening. Everybody's like, oh no, that can't ever happen. And then it would happen. And I would look at the astrology column in the newspaper and go, how does somebody know what's going to happen in my life before it happens? So it really led me to be proactive, because even though I had the family lineage there, I still had to go out and do my own learning. It wasn't like I had those family members around to just guide me and direct me and teach me. So ever since I was a child, I wanted to know. If I went on a family vacation someplace, I wanted a gemstone. I brought back a crystal or a rock, or as opposed to something else. And so it's just always been, in a way, a part of me.
Could you give us kind of a flavour of the different things that you might offer someone, or the different practices which you do?
It all depends on the individual and what's going on with them and what we're trying to accomplish. For example, if I'm doing a session with them or if I'm doing a workshop, a lot of times I leave things very open. And when I work with somebody, it's very conversational. So just like you and I are sitting down having a conversation right now, oftentimes my workshops and my sessions are designed that way. We're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation, talk about what's happening in your life. And as I listen to you, there's going to be different intuitive messages that I get, but then there's also going to be some other information that's going to come in, and it's going to trigger, oh, they're dealing with this repeated number pattern, or they're dealing with consistently drawing certain types of people into their life, or they're constantly finding themselves coming in second, or self-sacrificing, or things like that to please other people. And so then I can delve more into the soul patterns that might go with that, the karma that might be involved with that. When I work with people in live sessions and workshops, we also will do things of returning things that we no longer need to the archives, to the sacred archives, the DOF. But we'll also do various other things of just energy cleansing sometimes. So it's kind of a customized thing that a lot of people, they're used to getting a format.
Yeah.
They're used to being saying, okay, here's what we're going to do over the next 6 months, and this is the way it's going to go, and that's what I do for everybody. But for me, I don't really work that way. It's kind of like, okay, let's see what's going on, and let's see what we can get you started on, and what shifts need to be adjusted depending on where you are and where you want to be. I don't necessarily come from this is right or this is wrong. It's a matter of, is this serving you? Is it not serving you? Is it taking you in the direction you're trying to go?
Could you maybe give a flavour of what karma is, or soul patterns are, and how they can actually affect a person?
Well, and our karma and our soul path area, it's kind of like the summary, if we want to say, of our actions, our thoughts, our choices that we make. And this is something that happens lifetime after lifetime. So, for example, somebody might be experiencing some challenges in this lifetime, and they don't understand why they're not getting ahead. They're going, hey, I'm being nice to people, I care about people, I'm doing this service, I'm doing that service, and it seems like I still don't have anything to sustain me or to support me, for example. And when we look back over lifetimes, there's different places that we look back to. There's patterns that are going to be originating from early childhood, where we receive programming in this lifetime, and then there's going to be patterns that we received from previous lifetimes. So maybe in a previous lifetime we were much more greedy and we were much more selfish and we weren't in this service space of things. But every soul tends to have different paths that it's taking. It's learned different things, it's got the lessons that it's done. So all these choices that we've been making in parallel lives and past lives kind of bring us to where we're at right now. We can look at the right now, for example, and understand what's happened in our past. And sometimes we just have to keep working through things,
Yeah.
Which is why when I work with people on the angelic realm and I call in their angels and I cut cords, and it helps to clear a lot of this karma. As long as they're doing the action and they're taking the steps to continue to move forward on their path. And for some people, this is why we have so many different messages in the world. Because some people really resonate, for example, to one universal law as opposed to another universal law. Something will really resonate because that's their lesson that they're learning in this lifetime. So one person might be learning the lesson of reflection. Another person might be learning the cause and effect lesson. There's so many different subtle little pieces in there that it can really bring it together in a lot of different ways.
I find that now, we recently just had something, myself and my partner, because we're both spiritually inclined. When something happens, maybe someone does something the other person's not happy with, or something happens, and we tend to sit back, and we might have a couple of hours blowout, and then we tend to sit back and we will talk about it and actually try and find out what the actual lesson is on it. And what I find, I gave a reading literally within minutes of about an hour before I'm sitting here now. And one of the messages that came out of the reading that I did, and one thing I found, is when you actually start to identify those patterns, when you start to see the things that are happening, and you start to take those actions, it's fascinating sometimes just how quickly the universe responds and speeds up. Do you find that?
I find it absolutely fascinating. I'm constantly delving into, okay, what's going on in this situation? And we don't necessarily want to live in the past, but by understanding how we got to where we are now and the patterns that are involved, it keeps us from repeating cycles that are maybe undesirable for us, or that we would prefer not to keep repeating. So I think that's a big identity because it can help us move forward with greater wisdom. It can help us make smarter choices going forward when we understand where we've been. So we don't necessarily want to sit there and dwell on it. And, the bottom line is going to come down to, okay, this is what's happening in my life. What am I going to do about it?
That's the kind of part I was getting to. Is like when you do start to make those changes, rather than sort of dwelling on it, because people get caught in that trap, don't they, of actually dwelling on it and, oh my God, I keep meeting the wrong person, or I keep having this instance, and people also have the illusory of karma is like this kind of ass kicking thing in the universe that basically cleans up bad people or people who do bad things, and it's not, and this is what I try and tell people is that it's actually one of the most forgiving forces in the universe, because it keeps giving you the opportunity to overcome the hurdles in your life. If you mess something up, or if you make a mistake, you know that opportunity is going to come round again, and you're going to have that opportunity to make a different choice the next time. And if that choice doesn't work, it'll come round again until you make the choice that works right for you, or that helps bring you forward. I just find it fascinating when you do make those choices, how quickly it can actually help you move along. In a sense, the universe kind of provides validation when you've kind of made that, oh, that was the right choice. Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think so many people go through this pattern of feeling that they're the victim of their karma, and there's nothing they can do about it. And it is exactly as you were mentioning, that we make an action, and that's going to create a reaction in a sense.
Yes.
And that's kind of what karma is. It is cause and effect aspect. And we're seeing a lot of that in our society and times right now. Yes. The choices that we've made, for example, over the last 3 years during the ascension process, we're now going to see the effects of those during the next 5 years until we hit the year 2020. So this is an interesting time, what we're going to be seeing. Those people who think that people have been getting away with things are going to find out they weren't getting away with things, because that's going to blow up. And people that have been thinking they haven't been receiving anything for all their amazing efforts, and they're going to start receiving a lot of successes going on. And so what we've seen in the past is we've seen much greater delays. So we've seen this between lifetimes. Now that time frame is shortening. And the thing to keep in mind is the reason things are coming back around is because we haven't learned it. It's like we're having to repeat a grade that we failed. In a sense, I don't really like to use that term failed, but we didn't pass the course. We didn't get the understanding, so we're having to take the course again. And that's kind of what karma is. It's coming back up, maybe with different characters or a different setting, but it's the same lesson that's there, and it's coming back because we didn't get it. And the more we resist getting it, that's where people start to really experience the challenges, because when they say, I refuse to learn this, and I'm not going to get this lesson, and I'm not going to understand it, we go through a 3-part process. It's internal in our intuition first. We have a sense about it. Mm-hmm. And then it moves external to where it's coming at us through other people. So if we're experiencing other people getting aggressive, there's a blend between that being their choice and being a lesson for us to learn.
Yes.
And then it goes back to being internal in our physical body. And then our physical body will start manifesting oftentimes disease or illness or things like that, because we haven't listened to the lesson. And that's the natural process that we take in any given life or form. So by the time it hits the physical body, we've already ignored it a few times over. And karma is the same way. The more we ignore it, the harder the lesson's going to get. The bigger the challenges are going to get, the bigger the payback has to be. So I look at it, it's like the grand investment. Our actions may or may not have an immediate payoff, but when we continue to make wise choices in our actions, then we're setting ourselves up for a positive flow of energy that's going to support us moving forward.
You've mentioned two things that I think would be good to comment on. One is kind of a personal question, because you've mentioned it and it's something that's cropped up. The second one I'm going to ask you is something that's becoming a bit of a theme of this series, because it keeps coming up again and again and again, right? The first question, you mentioned parallel life. People are familiar with reincarnation, and obviously the process of regression, which is obviously the process of people exploring their past life under hypnosis. What is parallel lives, and how does this work?
Parallel lives are really interesting, because I've been in all three. I've delved into past lives, I've delved into parallel lives, and I've delved into future lives. Matter of fact, I'm doing a lot of future life work, it seems like, right now, and over the last several months. But parallel lives, we might experience that, for example, if we astral travel, which is where we exit our body, we go out into the universe, we get an experience. Parallel lives, anything that we have going on in our life, we're actually playing out multiple scenarios at the same time. So there's our ego self is playing out one side, our diabolical self is playing out another side, our angelic self is playing out another side. We have all of these parallels that are going on, all these different aspects of ourselves. So, when we talk about unity, it's really, I think, sometimes about bringing all these different selves together in the same place and time, to a sense. Obviously, when we come down here on Earth, we're kind of splitting ourselves in a way, because we do bring in all these emotions and all of these feelings and things like that we don't necessarily experience outside of this third dimensional realm. And in dealing with all of those different pieces of information, again, we have the different aspects of ourselves. We have the practical side, we have the impractical side. And matter of fact, I was just having a discussion yesterday, I think it was, with somebody about how, we look at polarities and we have just two in our polarity scheme here on the third dimension, but you get out into some of the deeper dimensions and we have 10, 12 polarities going on, for one thing. So when we look at the parallel lives, what's kind of cool is we can work through it in multiple ways. We have multiple options. It's just like even here on Earth, we have multiple ways we can approach things. If we can't do something physically, we can approach it from a mental aspect or a soul aspect, or an emotional aspect. There's multiple ways that we can get to something, and then those things can get us to the point that physically we can take the steps we need to take. So the parallel lives work very similar to that. If we're not working it out, for example, in our conscious waking day, when we lay down at night, we might go astral travel and go off and resolve it in a parallel life.
When I was growing up, from the age of about 16, and I still have it now, I started having these continuation dreams where I would visit like a village. I'd be like a seaside village, and I'd be exploring it, and I'd be talking to different people who were there. I would live there in different places within it. I've even had loved ones who've passed on appear there after they've passed on, and it's been a constant theme throughout my life. Dreams have been a huge, it had a huge impact on me. Especially, I'm moving sort of beyond now working with people's loved ones, though I am still doing it, into exploring different aspects and learning the different sides of it. But would you consider that sort of dream reality me explore? Because I keep exploring the same. I could tell you exactly what the layout of the village is. I could give you directions around it. I could tell you what parts it are. I've actually sat down before and actually mapped this village out. Where that bit lives there, that bit lives there. It's kind of a dreamscape. Is that the kind of thing that you are? Would that be considered a parallel life, or would that be considered something slightly different?
With the parallel life, really, whether that comes through a so-called dream state, astral travel state, we do have these multiple aspects and dimensions of ourselves, and they're there to try to help us learn our lessons. They're there to try to help us get through blocks or challenges that we've come. So when we get, for example, you mentioned something to me about a recurring theme going on. When we get these recurring themes, that is a huge soul lesson oftentimes. It's a part of the essence of how our soul functions, the role that our soul plays. Sometimes that might be that savior role. Sometimes that might be that person who's the calm factor that helps everybody else calm down in dramatic situations. It gives us insight into some of the core fundamentals of our soul and how our soul functions and our purpose, our mission, in a way, in there. The cool thing about parallel lives is if we choose to become more conscious in that process of parallel lives, we can actually break through a lot of our karma much quicker than if we just sit and live day by day going through life. And the reason I say that is because we have a certain amount of limitations being grounded in a physical form in the third dimension. But when we parallel life, we step out of that. So we remove those restrictions and we can accomplish a lot more in a very short period of time. What we find too is that just like our thoughts influence things that are happening in our life, regardless of the amount of actions we're taking. Let's say we could be putting a lot of effort into a project, but our thoughts are sitting there going, I don't know about this, I don't know if I can make it work, I'm really questioning this money factor or whatever the piece is. Parallel lives can work the same way. They can raise our doubts. They can bring little subtle messages in that we're, maybe aware of, maybe not aware of. We become aware of them because we feel maybe unsettled or we feel relaxed at a certain time. So we know whether some of those parallel lives are working with us or against us in situations. As a matter of fact, one of the cool things for working with parallel lives is, for example, if you're in a rough situation, maybe that situation that you're currently in is very challenging, very draining, very tough, and that's what you have to deal with. Let's say somebody loses their home and they've got to go live with a friend for a while, or be in a different situation that isn't as quiet and peaceful and requires a lot of adjustments. But in a parallel life, we can create the happy scenarios. We can create the ones that bring the joy to us where we don't have those restrictions. And I think that's the key. If we're always creating and we have this choice to create and to put these different aspects of ourselves into play so that we can give ourselves strength in this present moment in this particular lifetime, for example. You mentioned also something about future lives, which has been really interesting for me because while I was on tour in 2014 in the fall, that whole tour for me was like living, I future-lived that tour. And that was very interesting because I got all the messages, I got all the insights, I lived all the experiences. So every time I showed up someplace, it was like, okay, I've already been here. And I knew whether I was on track or not on track for what was happening. And I also knew that even when things got a little scary here or there in different points, that it was going to be okay because I always saw myself coming out okay. It's very similar, actually, in a way to sitting down and looking at a forecast, an astrological chart for what's coming in our way, projecting those possibilities. And the reason I say that is because it's information. And it's information to say, okay, we're going to show you a glimpse of maybe where we see you going, what you might be doing, and you might not understand it. Like, it might not make any sense at the time you receive the information, but lo and behold, whenever it is a few months or a few years down the line, it's like, oh yeah, I totally did this. I remember this when I'm in it. I joke around, I could have been living one big deja vu, and it's kind of trippy in a way. It's like, I kept thinking to myself, why would I be hanging out in the area that I grew up in? And it's like, now I know I'm sitting here in the area that I grew up in unexpectedly. And it's like looking at that forecast. It says, okay, here's where you're headed. Now you need to start getting prepared for that. You need to make some choices. Are you going to go down this path, or are you not going to go down this path? If you saw this outcome, do you want to repeat it, or do you want to do something different in the moment?
You also mentioned, this is the other thing I was going to ask you about, you mentioned the last 3 years as being the ascension period, and now there's going to be a period up until 2020. I know obviously there was a lot about the 2012 phenomenon. I actually think that the vibrations around 2012 were coming in well before then. I would say the last couple of decades, and obviously throughout that point has sped up. But I wanted a little bit about your interpretation of what you said about the last 3 years being the ascension period, and the next 5 years then being it escapes me what you called it. So I do apologize for that. But could you?
Well, what it is I think a lot of people went into this process starting back in 2012. You know, for a lot of people, it started even before that. It connects up with really an aspect of 7 Pluto-Uranus squares, which is huge, gigantic transformation. I mean, it's transformation many times over, and that's really what this so-called ascension or evolving time is about. And a lot of people, they thought, okay, oh, this is here, it's going to become all airy-fairy and everything's going to be great and everybody's going to be smiley and polite and you know, happy in the world. And that didn't happen, and that created a lot of challenges for people. And I kept thinking, okay, if these are supposed to be such incredible times, why is everything falling out on me? I get that a lot from people. Saying, you know, why did I go through all these challenges? Why is it just getting harder and harder and harder? And the reality of it is because it's really about bringing us to a point of helping us realize where we're at as a collective human race. It's about kind of saying, okay, you guys have had a lot of fun, and now we got to get really serious about some things if we're going to keep this going. And it's a combination of things of saying it's time to change. So, for example, the last time we had a series of Pluto-Uranus squares, we only had 5 versus 7 of them. And that happened when Hitler took reign and we had the Great Depression going on. So, you know, those weren't exactly small things.
No.
And this set was even more intense. So the last 3 years have really been about what choices are we going to make? Are we going to change our patterns? Our patterns are not working. It's been going in a self-destructive path for the earth, for the human race. And how are we going to make this transition? So now we need to start making some different choices, and that's what it's been about. When we make changes aren't always easy. You know, they don't always just drop us into a big pile of glory and fun and happiness. Again, we have to make that transition, and then we get there. It's kind of like when you make a move. You leave one situation, and the move itself can actually be very turbulent and challenging and draining and physically taxing on you and mentally taxing on you. But then when you get into the new home, you can sit back and enjoy a little bit more again. And you can go, wow, look at how far I came, and look at the difference, and look at where I'm at. You know, it's that investment, or when you're trying to invest in something, you're working towards something, and you're setting a little bit of money aside, maybe every week or every paycheck or whatever it is, and you don't get to see that immediate result. But by the time you save up over so many years and you put in the effort, then you get to see that reward. So we're kind of doing similar things. Now, the choices in this period of transformation, in this period of the earth, going through these natural disasters. We're seeing crazy things in some ways happen. Airplanes disappearing, volcanoes showing up out of nowhere, islands start to surface that haven't surfaced since Atlantis was in existence, things like this. It's huge stuff. And we have a choice. Are we going to come together? Are we going to get educated? Are we going to choose to learn about this? Are we going to get proactive in this process? Or are we going to just kind of get tossed around in this process? Or are we going to become controlling and bossy of people and, tighten down different things, which we see a lot of the governments doing and various things. So we have two different things. We have those people that let go and they step more into fear, and we have or let go and step more into love. And then we have those people who are very, very fear-driven, and they're trying to control and they're trying to grab tighter. And as we know, when we grab tighter, that creates tension. That means we get beat up more. So the choices that we've been making, whether it's been to be compassionate to people or whether it's been to be dominating to people, that what we've been choosing in the last 3 years, because of these transformational influences, have a bigger impact than normal. So now that's our law of cause and effect coming back. So instead of that effect now showing up in the next lifetime, it's going to be showing up between now and the year 2020, for example.
Okay.
So as we do that and we look into these pieces, people are going to some people are going to experience more successes, some people are going to experience more hardships based on the choices they made over the last 3 years, how they treated people, how they functioned. Did they go for the greed, or did they help somebody out in need? It all depends on what happened there. And as they go along the way and the challenges start to come up, of course, they're still going to have that opportunity to change and make a decision to go in a different direction and shift along the way. But this ties into so many prophecies. What we're seeing, it ties into so many prophecies of apocalyptic things, and where there's so many people and things that we could bring into this. But when we look at things from a numerological aspect and some other aspects, the year 2020 is the year of the angels. So that tells me right then and there that somehow we probably get through this mess that we're in. And that there is bound to be a shift balance that is going to sway again slightly more towards the compassionate side. And those that don't choose that, we're going to see a lot of natural disasters again coming up and wiping out collective areas. And that's not a doom and gloom thing. That's making us aware of, hey, we need to pay attention to the energy we're sending into the earth right now. And this is part of why I'm doing healing work as I go around on tour in different places, sending healing to the glaciers, working with the dolphins and the whales for the ocean areas, clearing out some of the effects of Fukushima that came through on the Pacific coast region here that I'm in now, working with areas that have tremendous sinkholes going on. These are not just the earth doing crazy things. This is the earth reacting to where we are.
To round this off then, would you like to give a little bit about the Compassion Tour, what it is and what people could expect, where they could actually sign up to go, that kind of stuff?
The Compassion Tour is a wonderful piece of my work that I've been putting together since I put out my books, Activate. And, I got a taste of tour, went on my first author signing tour, and I was like, oh, I just got to be out. And I do want people to know I do work with people, session work in different types of ways. I can work with them online, by phone, different ways like that. So people are international, I can work with them, things like that. Which is very easy to do. But the Compassion Tour itself, I go around the U.S. and I'm working on brand Canada right now, but it's a multi-state nationwide tour that is workshops, book signing events, raising events, healing activities that are going on. Some of these things are workshops like in little words. Sometimes I have private sessions available, but I also go along as I do healing along the way.
So you can find out more about Jessie by going to her website at www.jesseannicholsgeorge1.com, and you can also connect with Jessie on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, and I'll leave the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more Worlds Beyond and other content, which will be coming up shortly. And thank you for listening. Remember, if you have any feedback or if you have any questions, comments regarding today's show, then please leave them in the comments below and we'll try our best to get back to you. Once again, Jessie, thank you for joining us, and thank you guys for joining us and having a listen. What are your thoughts? Do we re-encounter patterns in our lives? Are things going to be drastically changed over the next 5 to 6 years? Let us know what you think, and I'll see you soon for more Worlds Beyond.